All right, new clashes are underway in the West Bank, where conflict between Israel and the Palestinians is escalating. There's reports at least one 18-year-old Palestinian has been killed and several others have been injured. The Palestinian Health Ministry says fighting erupted during an arrest raid at a refugee camp in the region.
This follows new strikes against Hamas targets in the Gaza Strip overnight. A new round of violence broke out on Monday when a rocket fired from Gaza hit a house north of Tel Aviv. So for more on this, we want to bring in Natan Sachs. He's the director at the Center for Middle East Policy at Brookings, and he's also a fellow at the Institute's Center for Foreign Policy, and he's with us from Washington. Natan, thanks so much for joining us. So this latest round of violence, I had thought for a moment there that Egypt had negotiated some sort of a ceasefire, but that didn't seem to go anywhere. Are we inching our way towards war?
Yeah, it's great to be with you. It does look like there's that potential. All the parties don't actually want war at the moment, and that's usually a good sign. But that's also been the case in the past. We've had rounds of violence in the past where none of the parties wanted to get into it. The Egyptian ceasefire, or attempts to reach a ceasefire, are the key. We're still seeing this simmering violence and tit for tat going on. It's not yet full blown, and I think we can be hopeful that it won't become full blown. But hopeful is all we can be. There's absolutely no assurance.
All right, Natan, if you can for us, can you just explain what exactly Hamas is and why the group is seen as a threat toward Israel?
Sure. So Hamas is basically the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, and it's one of the two main political parties among Palestinians. The other is Fatah, led by the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas. Hamas is the Islamic movement. And about 10 years ago, a little more, Hamas took over the Gaza Strip. It had won an election previously, and then we had a split between the West Bank, still now controlled by the Palestinian Authority and led by Mahmoud Abbas, and the Gaza Strip led by Hamas. The animosity between the two groups is very severe, sometimes even worse than the animosity towards Israel. And between Hamas and Israel, there is a long-standing fight. Hamas objected completely, rejected the peace negotiations between the Palestinians and the Israelis, is still officially dedicated to freeing all of Palestine, meaning including Israel. There has been some change recently in their approach to how they conduct that fight. But by and large, we've had a stalemate for 10 years now, where Israel and Egypt blockade the Gaza Strip in an attempt to bring Hamas down to its knees, and Hamas continuing to fight against far superior forces. Just recently, we saw 2 rockets to Tel Aviv a couple of weeks ago, and now, as you mentioned, the rocket north of Tel Aviv that hit a house and injured civilians and created this latest round that may blow up.
What's your take on the timing? This is happening just, weeks ahead of a major national election. Benjamin Netanyahu was here in this country at the time. He's cut his visit short to go back. What should we make of this?
It might well be related. The interests of the different factions in the Gaza Strip are quite different. So we have Hamas, as I said, that is in most control and is the one that is now under pressure by also public demonstrations. And sometimes when that happens, it tries to open the steam or let the steam out by attacking Israel and inviting a fight against the common enemy. But of course, there are other smaller factions, especially one important one, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which gets its orders almost directly from Iran. And there have been some accusation by Hamas that this is an Iranian attempt to stoke fire. We're very close to elections in Israel. April 9th, Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, is being challenged by a credible challenger, although Netanyahu is probably still slightly ahead. And this creates pressure inside Israel to react to any kind of strike from Hamas.
Natan, it's no secret that all of this comes as President Trump recognizes Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. How does that impact escalating tensions right now?
Well, this is a secondary issue. The Golan Heights, if you'll recall, were captured from Syria. They're not Palestinian territory under anyone's configuration. But of course, this is one more instance of the Trump administration taking very pro-Israel lines. And in that regard, for Palestinians, both Hamas but also the Palestinian Authority led by Abbas, for them, Trump has sort of sided very clearly with Israel and has, in that sense, broken a lot of the connections that existed before between the Palestinians and the Americans. That is serious. The Golan Heights recognition itself does not affect the Palestinian arena directly. It affects regional tension, and especially tension between Hezbollah in Lebanon and Israel, and of course the Syrians to a certain degree, to the degree that there is a Syria now. But the Palestinians is a slightly different arena and usually affected by different dynamics.
So how does this all play into the Trump administration's attempt at Mideast peace negotiations? Both the decision to recognize Israel's authority over the Golan Heights and also the uptick in conflict.
Well, we should say that from the start, the chances of success of a peace plan were very, very low, and some people call that an overestimate. The conditions on the ground are very bad between the different parties. They're not really ready to sign a peace deal between them. That said, when you're about to present a plan, the American administration has a serious handicap, which is that the Palestinian Authority has not spoken to it since 2017, December 2017, at least in official channels, about the peace plan, since the declaration of recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and the movement of the embassy. So all this does not augur well. The Golan Heights, again, is not on the Palestinian arena, but it strengthens the decision on Jerusalem and a string of other decisions that, from Palestinian perspective, are very pro-Israeli. From the Israeli perspective, of course, it strengthens, again, this perception of very strong support from the United States and the Trump administration, and in that sense gives the Trump administration leverage. If they wanted to use it, they could now cash in on some of these very big favors to Israel. The violence in the Gaza Strip between Israel and Hamas doesn't help at all. We've seen in the past, even just the last peace initiative led by Secretary of State Kerry, that violence in Gaza was often what brought things to the final halt. In part because the peace negotiations are almost always focused on the West Bank and Israel, on the Palestinian Authority and Israel. And they sort of assume that the Gaza Strip will solve itself somehow. But the truth is the Palestinian territories are divided, and there are two of them. And without addressing the Gaza Strip seriously, it's a very hard thing to do, but without addressing it seriously and thinking about how it would fit into a diplomatic effort, it's hard to imagine a peace process succeeding.
Natan Sachs, thank you so much.
Thank you.